Hello, and welcome to another episode of Have Good Fun. I am your host, Samuel, and today we will be going on a journey to the ages of Vikings. Or, more specifically, the people that allegedly created the Vikings. So, basically what this actually is me looking through the Norse gods. I've done Greek gods, I've done Egyptian gods, and now we're going into Norse gods. Probably the next most popular batch of gods out there. So, same as I have done with the previous two pantheons, I'm going to be looking through this list that I have found of top 10 Norse gods and talking about my thoughts on it. Now, I will mention a full disclosure here. Out of the three pantheons we've looked at so far, Norse is the one that I'm the least familiar with. But I'm going to still instill my opinions on all of this stuff. Now, obviously, the Norse gods have, they've actually received a lot more attention lately. Obviously, the most well-known implementation of the Norse gods includes Marvel Comics. Because in Marvel Comics, the Norse gods have a rather big role. Obviously, one of the founding members of the Avengers is a Norse god. And it's worth mentioning that the Greek gods and Egyptian gods and Japanese gods and all the other mythological gods, still exist in the Marvel Universe. It's just that Norse gods get the most attention. Compare that to, DC and, well, actually most mediums that place a more focus on Greek gods. Obviously, also, the most recent God of War game, the one that's coming out, I'm pretty sure quite soon, obviously will be focusing on Norse mythology as well. And I know that during the Greek gods episode, I had talked about how much I was not a fan of the God of War series in the Greek pantheon, mostly because Kratos is just a terrible person in it. I actually like the Norse God of War more, because Kratos is actually a better person in this one. So I actually have played all the way through God of War now. Okay, not gonna lie, it has impacted my thoughts on some of the gods a little bit. But really it's more just been the gods that I didn't really know as well. So, this list that I found is from summary.org, and it is top 10 Norse gods worshipped by the Vikings, by Jessica Suez? Crap, I should have checked. I'm sorry, Jessica, I'm sure you're not actually listening to this. But, in any case, let's start with number 9 and 10. These two have actually... Number 9 and 10 are actually kind of put under the same entry because they are twins. Number 9 is Freyr, and 10 is Freya. Freyr, twin to Freya, is one of the Vanir gods, and was the most important deity when it came to fertility, both sexual and ecological. He was a symbol of bountiful harvests and virility, and was symbolized by the boar. And this picture that I'm on right now shows him riding a boar, actually, which was often sacrificed to him and then eaten by the guests at marriage ceremonies. Ah, interesting. Twin sister of Freyr, Freya was another Vanir god, but pledged loyalty to the Aesir gods after their tribal war. Yeah, so it's like the Vanir and the Aesir in Norse mythology are like two different groups of gods. The Aesir are basically all the ones that you know, like, Thor, Odin, Loki. They're all Aesir. And the two of them fought in a war against each other. But obviously, as it says here, Freya pledged loyalty to the Aesir gods after their tribal war. She was the goddess of love, beauty, and opulent objects, and was often represented as a seeker of pleasure and the unknown. Freya was also considered to have the power to influence a person's destiny and fortune by manipulating a person's desires. So, right off the bat, I feel as though, sort of seems like she's kind of Freya seems like she's kind of a combination of, like, Aphrodite and, Isis. Two other goddesses, you know, Greek, Egyptian, all of that stuff. Just as far as, like, roles and what they do and that. Also, I'm just going to mention the picture that these two are in. Freya is on a sled, or sleigh, that is being driven by cats. Like, domestic cats. They're sled cats. Yeah. So yeah, we got the two twins, and it's also worth mentioning that the picture of Freyr and Freya are the only two that are not like a picture of them from the Marvel comics. All the others are like scans from the comics of the characters. This is the only one that isn't, which I guess kind of implies that these two aren't typically like a huge deal in the comics. Anyway, yeah, they kind of, yeah, go hand in hand. Anyway, number 8, Tyr, the deity of war. By the way, in Norse mythology, there is not actually just one god of war. Basically, every god and goddess is some kind of god of war, because in case you hadn't noticed, the Vikings were pretty big on war. Anyway, the deity of war, heroic glory, and the formalities of conflict, little is known of Tyr's origin, perhaps because he was the most important deity before being supplanted by Odin. This actually gets brought up in God of War. Due to his link with the formalities of conflict, he was often treated as a deity of justice and oaths. Tyr is often depicted with only one hand, as he selflessly sacrificed one of his hands in order to trap the giant wolf Fenrir. Despite this impediment, Tyr continued to be a fearless warrior and went on to slay Garm, the guard dog of Hel. Oh yeah, that's another thing worth mentioning. In case you didn't know, Hel is one of the 9 realms in Norse mythology, but it is nothing like the Christian Hell. It's like, it depends on kind of how you look, like, the interpretation. Like, the full name of it is Helhimr. But yeah, it's nothing like the Christian hell. It, in some ways, like some depictions, it's not even like a punishment place. Sometimes it's kind of a paradise place. But anyway, Tyr. I know that I first heard of him, from Smite, because, yeah, he was, I think they said that he was the god of war in that game. And he looks very different in the comics. In the comics, he's got, like, long black hair in pigtails and a black mustache. In Smite, he's got very short, like, almost like bald cut red hair, I think it was. But yeah, Tyr is cool. Tyr is cool. I like him. Number 7, Baldur. Another son of Odin, Baldur was a god of light and purity, and was epitomized the effulgent summer sun itself. He was characterized as a fair, wise, and gracious divine being of beauty and elegance. Unfortunately, Baldur met a tragic end. The cunning Loki, aware that thanks to the machination of his mother Frigg, Baldur was impervious to all living elements with the exception of mistletoe, gave a mistletoe dart to Baldur's blind twin brother Hodor. While playing, the dart accidentally pierced Baldur's heart, killing him. The Norse gods tried to bring him back to life, but failed. This is another thing, another difference between Norse mythology and other mythologies. Here, in Norse mythology, the gods and deities aren't actually immortal. They're extremely powerful, but they can still die. Compare that to, like Egyptian mythology, where the gods can die, but they always come back, and Greek gods, where the gods just straight up can't die at all. Like, no matter what, they will not die. But you can still make them suffer, which has been a plot point for some other stories. But yeah, Baldur dies, and actually, I'm just going to give a bit of a spoiler. If you have not played God of War, just skip, let's say like 10 seconds from now. So go! So this is actually how Baldur dies in God of War. He gets shot with a mistletoe arrow. Okay, I think that's enough time. Okay, so, yeah, nothing unusual happened in those 10 seconds. Yeah, Baldur is, I like him. I always like him. Maybe it's because he's a god of light. I always like gods of light. They're always nice. He's also called Baldur the Brave, and, he's a nice guy. Anyway, number 6, Heimdar. Or rather, Heimdall. Oh, wait, that might be wrong. Shit. Heimdall. The ever-vigilant god of Asgard, the home of the Aesir gods, Heimdall has the horn Gjalhorn. Heimdall has the horn Gjalhorn, which he uses to sound the approach of intruders. As a divine god, he is also said to possess keen insight and hearing, as well as foreknowledge and vast sources of energy that allows him to go with very little sleep. One Old Norse poem suggests that Heimdall may have been the father of humankind and may have been responsible for creating the hierarchy of classes among men. Yes, so his keen eyesight is a pretty big point in Marvel anyway. In Marvel, Heimdall is it's basically like he can see everything within the 9 realms with his eyes. And it's actually for that reason that in Thor Ragnarok he was able to evacuate a lot of Asgardians because he foresaw what was happening. So yeah, Heimdall is he's a pretty cool dude. It's a funny thing that I'm gonna bring up later on. Don't you worry. Number 5, Hel. The ruler of the netherworld, also called Hel, the goddess Hel was the daughter of Loke. Yeah, so the realm and the person are both called Hel. The goddess Hel was the daughter of Loki and the daughter of Loki. The goddess Hel was the daughter of Loki and the giant Angrboda. It was her job to judge the souls that entered her realm and decided their fate. She is often portrayed in Viking sagas as partly decomposed, having the face and body of a living woman but the legs of a corpse. She is considered extremely powerful, perhaps more powerful than Ordin, at least inside her own realm. Yeah, so that's something that's different from the Norse myths. In the Norse myths, Hel is actually Loki's daughter. But obviously in the comics and the movies, she is his long-lost sister and is actually Ordin's daughter. And there's actually a funny thing that someone had pointed out. That it's like, Hel and Loki both have black hair and they both wear green. So it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if you... I wouldn't blame you if you thought that Thor was the adopted one in this case. It's quite weird. But the thing is, in the normal myths, Hel, like, from memory, she doesn't really do too much. She kind of minds her own business. She's not really overly good or evil. Or maybe she is more evil. I don't know. But I do know, what I do know is that stories do tend to paint gods of death, and goddesses of death in this case, as evil characters, because death is seen as evil. Which is interesting, actually. Anyway, number 4, Frigg. Queen of the gods and consort of Ordin, Frigg was the goddess of the sky and had special powers of foreknowledge. As the mother of many gods, she was also often associated with fertility, motherhood, marriage, and domestic matters. Despite her importance, less information has survived about the goddess Frigg than other Norse deities. So yeah, in a lot of ways, she's kind of like the Norse version of Hela. Wait, no, hold on, sorry. Hera. Except with a better relationship, because I think, as far as I know, Ordin doesn't really cheat. Anyway, number 3, Loke. The favorite character in Thor. The trickster god with the power to shapeshift, Loke was the son of giants, adopted by Odin. Loki is never presented as purely evil, but rather as chaotic and cruel, and having little consideration for the consequences of his actions. Loki is variously represented as Thor's comrade or nemesis in the different surviving myths. Nevertheless, it was foretold that Loki would be responsible for the deaths of many of the gods during Ragnarok, the end of the world. Because in a way, he birthed a lot of the, or rather is the father of, like, Jormungandr and Fenrir, and Hel, obviously, all of whom I think, or at the very least Jormungandr, has a rather significant role in Ragnarok. Anyway, number 2, Thor. God of thunder and rock and roll. Okay. Thor was the epitome of a mighty warrior, strong, brave, but also reckless. Son of Ordin, Thor was considered the strongest of all beings, but his strength was still amplified by some specially crafted accessories, including iron gloves, the belt of Meginjard, and of course his mighty hammer Mjolnir. Strangely enough, as well as a warrior and god of thunder, Thor was considered a god of agriculture and fertility. There's a lot of those in Norse myth as well, actually. This was probably in connection with his role over thunder and lightning, which was linked to all-important rain. And then, of course, number 1 is Ordin. Ordin was the king of the Aesir gods. He was also considered the god of wisdom, healing, war, death, and sorcery. All in one! As the god of wisdom, he was characterized as often throwing off his regal divinity and walking the world as a haggard wanderer, relentlessly seeking knowledge. He also said to have gouged out his own eye as a sacrifice to Mimir, a being that possesses unparalleled knowledge, because he had drunk from the well of Urd at the roots of the Tree of Life. This actually gets brought up in my History of Thor episode a little bit, sort of. Mimir offers Ordin the elixir in return for his eye. As the god of war and death, he was seen as often provoking wars and then becoming the epitome of a Viking berserker warrior, embodying chaos and frenzy. Ordin's symbol was the raven, and he was often accompanied by 2 ravens, Hugin, thought, and Munin, memory. So, that was their top 10, and I feel as though kind of makes sense. Like, at the very least, the last parts make a decent amount of sense, I would say. Having, you know, Ordin, Thor, and Loki in the top 3 and, you know, all of that stuff. That all makes sense. But it is wrong! And I'm going to show you why. So, I'm going to start with my Okay, you know what? I'm going to... You know what? Okay, so number 10, I'd put Freyr, considering that he is regarded as a peaceful god of farming, fertility, peace, wealth, and sexual virility, all of which are very important aspects in a society, particularly one. But considering the fact that Freyr and Freya, who in this one is called the goddess of love, lust, fertility, and war, like, considering those two are twins, it seems like it would be a bit unfair to put one over the others. So you know what? I'm gonna put both of them as tied for 10th place, I guess. And I guess now this has become a top 11. So, number 10, a tie between Freya and Freyr. Yeah, this one is like, I don't really know a huge amount of all of these, so I'm kind of just judging by what little I've read. Anyway, number 9 is Frigg. Very much for, this, like, in a way, as far as I'm concerned, she's kind of like, Hera, from Greek mythology, but a bit of a better person. Maybe because she's in a more stable relationship. But, yeah, she's great. You know, she's obviously the, you know, the goddess of, like, motherhood and, other stuff. Where was the... Oh, no. Where was the article? There was an article that I was looking at that showed all of... But, okay, whatever. Anyway. Yeah, number 9 is Frigg. And, I feel like I gotta include some fun fact of some kind. But I feel as though actually I've already mentioned it anyway. So, moving on. Number 8, Heimdar. Heimdar, obviously the protector of Asgard and guardian of the Bifrost. Now, I will admit, Heimdall has he's become much more significant as far as attention goes, because of Thor Ragnarok, which is where he plays a much more significant role in it. But then he, like, what? He dies, like, in Infinity War. It's like, okay, I guess he wasn't that important in the end. Anyway, yeah, so Heimdall is always cool. I like the idea of, like, foresight, you know, being able to see the future before it happens and all that. But then again, it does lead to the question of, like, what happens if, like, you see the future, it's something you don't want, but you can't do anything to change it. What do you do then? Anyway, number 7, Forseti. Now you may not know who that is because he wasn't on the original list. Forseti is the god of justice and reconciliation, and it's pretty much just for that reason alone that I've put him in number 7, because justice and reconciliation, they're very important stuff. Oh, wait! Before I move on, I just remembered something about Heimdall. Something that put him above Frigg and Freyr. The dude has 9 mothers, or something like that. It's like he was born from 9 mothers, I'm pretty sure. Let me double check that. It was like he doesn't have a father, but he has yes, 9 mothers. He has 9 mothers. Which I reckon is just great. It's like, see, here's the thing. Norse mythology is kind of crazy in some points. For example, 9 women were apparently able to create a child together. Somehow. How? You know, magic. Anyway, yeah, so, Forseti is, number 7. There's only 1 T in Forseti. Okay. That's okay. Anyway, number 6, Mimir. Now, if you have played God of War, you probably would have a better idea on who that is. But for those who don't, Mimir is the wisest of the gods and advisor to Ordin. He was the one that kind of gave Ordin some wisdom, some extra wisdom because he sacrificed his eye. Mimir, in God of War, got his head cut off, but was kept perpetually alive. So he had his head cut off, but he was still alive, so he was just a talking head. And then he's a funny guy in God of War. He's a good, funny guy. He's also kind of the protagonist that has the best idea of what's going on in the world. So yeah, this Mimir is the guy that I'm taking his interpretation in God of War into account, because that's kind of how I know him, and I like him in that. So that's why I have put Mimir where he is. But also, wisest of the gods, that's always very important. Like, I reckon wisdom is a very undervalued trait a lot of the time. Like, intelligence is good, but wisdom is just as important, if not more important, than intelligence. Remember that. Be wise, everybody. Anyway, number 5, Thor. My number 5 is Thor. Some may say a little bit too low, but, you know, I'm judging based on the Norse myth, not the Marvel comic. Yes, so Thor is the god of thunder and the strongest of the gods. There's also quite a few differences between him and comics Thor. So, difference is that in the Norse myths, Thor is a redhead. He's commonly depicted as a redhead. And his hammer doesn't have like an enchantment on it or anything that's like you can only lift it if you're worthy. In the normal myths, it's just that the hammer itself is so heavy that only Thor can lift it. Which I think is the same thing that happens in the Ultimate Universe of Marvel, where they have like different versions of the characters. I think in that one it's like, again, the hammer doesn't have an enchantment, it's just super heavy. Whereas in the comics, obviously, Thor has blonde hair and that enchantment on him that's like, you can only lift the hammer if you're worthy. And the thing is that the comics have never actually really confirmed what makes someone worthy of lifting the hammer. I think it may just be because I've seen a film theory episode of it, where they go in depth on the whole worthiness question. But I kind of have a better idea on what counts as being worthy in the MCU rather than the comics. Maybe because, you know, there are some instances where someone isn't considered worthy at one point and then all of a sudden is worthy for different reasons. Yeah, it's like, this is kind of a talking point within a lot of comic fans. It's like, you know, which superheroes would be considered worthy? Especially DC characters. That's a particular talking point. Which DC characters would be considered worthy? My personal opinion is that I reckon Wonder Woman should definitely be considered worthy. Superman, maybe, maybe not. And those are kind of the only two that I can think of off the top of my head. There might be others that would be considered worthy as well, but I would need to think more about that. That might be an interesting episode idea, actually. Anyway, another like controversial talking point has been they've recently revealed what Thor looks like in God of War Ragnarok. And in that one, people have been saying that Thor looks fat. And people are like, you know, this is an insult to the Norse god and all of that. And then, like, a lot of, like, here's the thing, alright? If you are one of those people who have complained about that, rest assured, Thor is not fat in that. He has a strongman's physique, which, yes, it means that he isn't going to have, like, he's not gonna have a six-pack. He's not gonna have super bulging, veiny muscles all over the place. But the thing is, if you're looking for strength, that is, like, the peak physical condition for, like, strength. Like, you're getting max strength if you have that type of physique. Because that's not fat. That's, like, that is pure muscle. And, like, I think anyone in the fitness industry will tell you, if you do a strength competition between a bodybuilder, which is kind of the type of physique that Chris Hemsworth has when he plays Thor, and a strongman like Hafthor Bjornsson, the strongman's gonna win every single time. Like, the strongmen are pretty much always stronger than bodybuilders, obviously. It's kind of the whole form versus function type of thing. Anyway, talked about Thor long enough. Let's go to number 4, Loke. Yes, Tom Hiddleston himself, the god of mischief. So, here's something that's a little bit different. In the comics, Loke is, Thor's brother and Ordin's, son, or adopted son. In the myths, I don't know why my English is so bad right now. In the myths, he's actually Thor's uncle and Ordin's brother. So, yeah, that's one difference. Obviously, also, he gave birth to or rather, he fathered a giant snake, a giant wolf, and a girl. So, I don't know how biology works there, but obviously God of Mischief is like, I love it. It's great. Love me some mischief. It's always great. Also, pretty much every single problem in Norse mythology can kind of be summed up with, unfortunately, Loki was being mischievous. Kind of like how every Greek myth story can be summed up with, unfortunately, Zeus was horny. Oh well. But also, let's talk about the time. Let's talk about the time that Loki got impregnated by a horse. All right, can we talk about Loki fucking a horse? Like, let's go into that. All right. So it was like Ordin wanted to. I think it was like he wanted to like stick it to like the frost giants or something like that. So he had Loki turn into a horse and then get this other horse with 6 legs to impregnate Loki. And then Loki gave birth to, I think, the wolf, Fenrir. And Ordin was like, okay, sweet, we've got a weapon of mass destruction, I'm taking it. And Loki was like, but I gave birth to that child, shouldn't I be allowed to raise it? And Ordin was like, ha ha ha, no. So, yes, that's something worth mentioning. Loki's a furry. In Norse mythology, Loki is a furry, and Thor is a cross-dresser. I forgot about that as well. Thor was like, he put on a bride's outfit, and then, like, to infiltrate a wedding in Frost Giant land, and then all of a sudden he was like, surprise, it was me! Thor! And then he killed everyone or something like that. This is what I mean when I say the Norse mythology is insane. It's like, Anyway, number 3 is Ordin. The most well-known, Ordin is the All-Father of the gods. He is on the same caliber as Zeus and Ra. I don't know if that would be the accent you would use for Ra. But yeah, Ordin is he is the All-Father. As I had mentioned before, Ordin is the father of he's the god of a lot of things. What was brought up again? It was like, god of wisdom, healing, war, death, and sorcery. Like, basically, in a lot of ways, he's like the god of everything. Also, he looks so metal. Also, I think from memory, it's like he's not as much of a tool as Zeus is. But he's still kind of a tool. But yeah, Ordin is like... The dude looks so metal. Like, Viking with spear, one eye, long beard, and pet ravens. Like, can't get much more metal than that. Also, I really like the whole deal of, like... Because I'm pretty sure in the Norse myths, Ordin knows about Ragnarok. He knows that it's coming. And it's like his whole deal is like he's been trying to prevent that from happening. It's very interesting having a god that's like is aware of the apocalypse that's coming and is actively trying to prevent it from happening. I reckon that's very interesting, actually. Anyway, next up, so you might be wondering, I've basically put the big three somewhere outside of the top two. So, what's happened? Who are the two filling the spot? Well, number 2 for me is Tyr. As mentioned before, god of war, justice, honor, all of that kind of stuff. He's a very honorable guy. I really respect Tyr. I mean, if he was a real person and all of that. But, anyway, he, so the thing was, the wolf Fenrir, had been bound, and it was like he was being captured, he'd been detained by the gods and all of that stuff. Fenrir, I think, had, come up with, it was like, they'd given him a ribbon, I think, that was, like, indestructible, and it bound him or something like that. Fenrir was, suspicious of this. So he was like, oi, I'm betting that this is magic. And then Ordin was like, I bet. And then Fenrir was like, okay, how about this, alright? If this thing's magic, alright, can we agree that, if I can't break this thing, it's definitely magic? And it's like, okay, sure. And it's like, okay, so here's my proposition for you here, alright? So, if I can't break this thing, I'm gonna bite off one of your hands. One of you pick yourselves. I'm gonna bite your hand off. And then Tyr was like, yeah, alright, fair. Yeah, that's fair. And he's like, stuck his arm right in the wolf's mouth. And then he, like Fenrir was trying to break it, but he couldn't. And then he was like, alright, this is magic. I'm gonna bite your hand off now. And then Tyr was like, yeah, fair, that's it. Yeah, innit, fam. And then he lost his hand over that. But it was like the man kept his word. He's quite honorable. I got a lot of respect. It takes a lot to voluntarily give up your hand like that. I'm not sure whether Tyr knew that it was enchanted or not. I kind of feel like he did, but he did it anyway. You know, that's very noble of him. Very honorable of him. Anyway, and the final guy, number 1. Number 1 is Baldur, the god of sun, gracious, wise, and divine. This dude is kind of like the prodigal son of Norse mythology. He would have gone on to do great things if Loke hadn't killed him. It is a real shame. Baldur was a very bright boy. I think the reason why I'm putting him at the top is because, like, he's probably the most benevolent Norse god out there. He is... Despite what God of War would have you believe, where it's like he just kind of starts picking a fight with Kratos for no reason, Baldur is he's actually a very nice guy. He's very benevolent, and obviously god of the sun, god of light. I always like my gods of light. Apollo was second in Greek gods. Ra was first in Egyptian gods. Baldur is first here. It seems like I really do seem to have a thing for gods of light and the sun. I mean, it's a very nice thing. Like, you can't knock the sun. Otherwise, you'll die. I will say, though, despite how inaccurate his depiction was in God of War, he was still a very interesting character in that game. I actually really liked the idea that he's picking a fight with heaps of people just to try and feel something, because he's like, I've gone decades without feeling anything. I want to feel something. That's a very interesting goal for a villain to have. I actually really liked it. So yeah, that is my top 10 of Norse gods. If I missed your favorite Norse gods, I apologize. Like I said, I'm not really too familiar with Norse gods. These are the ones that I know the most, obviously. And yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this top 10 Norse gods. I'm not sure how long this one's been in comparison to the others, but in any case, I will see you guys in the next episode. Exactly what that may be, you shall have to find out yourself, eventually. And so, without further ado, I bid you all adieu, and I hope each and every one of you have a good one.